Welcome to the Smarter Driver Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rick August, and here we're going to get you on the road to becoming a safer, smarter driver. And no, my degree is not in driving. My degree, in fact, is in legal history, which many of you know is the study of policing, courts, and prisons. My expertise is in policing as it relates to traffic. Here, we're going to look at the fundamental conflict of traffic, which is collisions versus congestion. And we're going to look at the arena of social driving, the challenges you face as a driver, the challenges you face when getting a license or starting a career as a truck or bus driver. The car's all gassed up, we're ready to go. Let's get started. Hi there, smart drivers, talking to you tonight about car care, keeping your car up and down the road so it doesn't leave you on the side of the road like the buggy did a couple of weeks ago, and it wasn't anything to do with maintenance. It was something to do with an old feature in the vehicle that no longer worked and was overriding the ignition. So the reason you want to maintain your vehicle, do the things that need to be done when they need to be done, is so that you don't end up on the side of the road. It's that old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, which means sometimes it's easier to keep the front end greased than it is to replace parts of the front end later on down the road. And that's essentially what's going to happen if you don't keep your vehicle maintained well. And I would like to thank all of the people that left comments on the TikTok videos, because this is where that came from. Is I was talking about that, leaving space in front of your vehicle so that you can see the tires of the vehicle in front making clear contact with the pavement, which is approximately one vehicle length, and as well maintaining that 3 to 5 second following distance. And of course, nobody measures the 3 to 5 second following distance. Essentially, they just kind of guess it. But essentially what you need to do, if you are using the brake for anything other than downhill speed control, coming to a stop, slowing for cars in front, or unexpected events, you're probably following too close, because you should be using the gas pedal, the accelerator, for controlling speed, or controlling space rather, in front of your vehicle. If you're using the brake for that, you're too close and you're being reactionary. So as Joe just reminded me, it's called bilateral control, which is essentially managing space around your vehicle. And if we can all manage space around our vehicle, oddly enough, we could reduce congestions in our urban areas and other places on interstate. Goose says, my company wants me to change the oil every 16,000 kilometers. It's a 2020 Toyota Corolla. My thinking is that's pushing it big time, but I don't make the rules. Seems okay so far. Are you running synthetic oil in that Corolla that you have there? Because if you're running synthetic oil, it will run your oil changes out farther. 16,000 kilometers seems a little much for an oil change on a car. I might push it to 12,000 kilometers if I'm running full synthetic oil in a vehicle, especially if you're running city driving. That's a bit harder on it, so you probably want to change the oil a bit earlier. And it's like I said, if you have a newer vehicle and you're running full synthetic in it, then yes, you can run your oil changes out a little bit farther. But you know, if you're not running synthetic oil, for example, my old buggy, I don't run synthetic oil in it. I just run old regular oil in it, and I change the oil in it every 5,000 kilometers, which is about 3,000 miles, which is what you want to be changing the oil at. But as you said, then you want to be running that out a little bit more. So 5,000, 6,000 miles with full synthetic oil on a vehicle. Rick, if your tires are wearing unusual, it could be a bigger problem. Yes, that's absolutely true. And if your tires are wearing unusually, then you want to take your vehicle in for a wheel alignment. There's probably something wrong with the, something in the vehicle that needs to be replaced. And that's something that you're going to notice, or the tire shop is going to notice when you're rotating your tires, and you should be rotating your tires every 2 oil changes. Now, if you're changing your oil at 12,000, 16,000 kilometers, that's a little bit much. If you're changing the oil at those kinds of intervals, then you should be rotating your tires every oil change, because you should be doing your tires every 6,000 miles, every 10,000 kilometers on your vehicle to keep them wearing evenly. Joe says, yeah, 16,000 clicks, that's a little bit much. Tyler, suspension problems could cause unusual wear. Yes, they could. Tie rod ends, linkage in the front end, bushings. I had bushings go out on the back end of the buggy, which let the back end go loose. There's all kinds of reasons for irregular tire wear on your vehicle, and these are all part and parcel of having inspections. So without further ado, let's get over to the presentation, and we'll come back at the end and I'll answer any questions you have about car care, passing a road test, all those types of things. So getting started here, look after your ride and it's going to look after you. You don't want to end up on the side of the road in, 100-degree weather, or when it's sub-zero temperatures and it's minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit. You just want your car to keep running. For those of you new to Smart Drive Test, my name is Rick August. I was a truck driver in the 1990s, licensed commercial driving instructor in 1997. The reason I became a licensed commercial driving instructor was a bid to get off the road. I was an over-the-road truck driver. I was gone all of the time. It's really tough to have relationships when you're on the road. And we're talking the days before cell phones and the internet. So you didn't have those forms of communication that you do now. In the 1990s, it was payphones. You were sitting on a payphone. Fortunately, in the truck stops, they did have payphones that you could use. They were sitting at the table, and you could sit at the table and talk to your family and those types of things. But it's a little bit better now, but still, it's a lonely life and it's a hard life, and they own you. So this was the reason I became a licensed commercial driving instructor. Went back to university in the early 2000s, graduated from the University of Melbourne with a doctorate in legal history in 2006. Greyhound, I drove for one of the Greyhound bus lines in Australia while I was going to university there. And then in 2015, once, life went a little bit dark there, had a divorce, lost my job at the truck driving school, and started the online business, the YouTube channel, and the website and whatnot. And it's been wildly more successful than I could have imagined. We are just crazy busy here. And as I said, we're starting a podcast, finishing up a book here. So lots going on here on the other side of the computer screen there. New video this week, CDL driver's jobs. I was talking about why some CDL drivers are not checking their air brakes as part of their daily pre-trip inspection. And this is one of the kind of dirty little secrets in the trucking industry is that in order to check your air brakes and check pushrod travel, you have to have wheel chocks in the vehicle, because you have a way of the vehicle not rolling away so that you can release the parking brakes and get out and check pushrod stroke. And nobody really says that. There aren't wheel chocks on the truck anywhere that we can actually get out and check our pushrod travel. And one of the mechanics had asked me about that, so I did a video on a short video. All right, so first thing that we talked about, you need to do oil changes. If you're just have an old vehicle and you're running regular oil, it's going to be 3,000 to 5,000 miles for an oil change, and you're going to be doing a tire rotation based on the 3,000 to 5,000 miles every 2 oil changes. Now, if you're running full synthetic oil, as we were talking about, then you probably want to be doing a tire rotation every oil change. So if your oil changes are 12,000 kilometers, then you want to be rotating the tires at the same time. The reason you want to be rotating the tires is because we have front wheel drive vehicles and the tires steer and they wear differently than they do on the back. So there's different ways that they rotate the tires. If they are directional tires, the front go on the back and the back go on the front. If they're not directional tires, then the front right goes on the back left, the front left goes on the back right, and then the 2 back ones go to the front, okay? Your tire shop is going to know that for you, or you can simply look it up according to the manufacturer of your tires, whether they're Bridgestones, Michelin's, Firestones, or whatnot, on their website, and they will show you how to rotate your tires. Most of us are just going to go into a tire shop and let them do that for us, okay? It's inexpensive. It's like less than $20 to get your tires rotated. There are a whole bunch of different filters, not a whole bunch, but about a half a dozen different filters in your vehicle. Engine air filter. This is the filter that filters the dirt out of the air before it's put into your engine and mixed with the gasoline. The fuel filter should be changed every 10 to 15,000 kilometers. And the air filters, the fuel filter is going to depend a little bit where you're buying fuel and what kind of roads you're driving on. So if you're driving on gravel roads or you're driving on dusty, dirty roads and those types of things, then you're going to be needing to change the engine air filter more often than you normally would. Okay, cabin filter. Most vehicles will have a cabin filter in them. The buggy, for example, has a cabin filter in it. And this is the air that you breathe inside the vehicle. So you want to be changing the cabin filter every couple of years. And yes, this picture of this filter here, I'm embarrassed to say, Is the filter out of the buggy? I kind of forgot about it, and after 5 years, I thought, oh, you know, one day I thought, oh, maybe I should change this. They're not exactly easy to change. They're a little bit of a nuisance. It probably takes you about half an hour, 45 minutes to get all the bolts undone to get the thing in there. But, you know, this is really gross. So I leave it at that. Automatic transmissions the filter should be changed, and the fluids should be changed every 50 to 80,000 miles on your vehicle. So change those as well, and know there's a filter in there. Fluids, transmission fluid, differential fluid, so your rear ends, and your radiator fluid. All of these are kind of in the 75,000 to 100,000 mile range. These are not exact numbers, but they are something that should be changed. I recently changed the differential fluid in the buggy as well. Manual transmissions also have fluid in them and need to be changed, and should be changed every couple of years to maintain the vehicle, have proper lubrication for the gears and those types of things. So know that as well. Belts, brakes, and batteries. Some, not all, some vehicles will have timing belts. Timing belts should be changed approximately every 100,000 kilometers, or 100,000 miles rather. The reason the timing belts need to be changed is there's motors that are interference motors and non-interference motors. I have an interference motor in my buggy. And what that means is that the piston goes down and the valves insert into the piston chamber. So if the belt breaks and you haven't changed it, what happens is the piston comes up and smashes into the bottom of the valve, which wrecks the top end of your motor, and it's about a $3,000 or $4,000 fix. Whereas you can change the timing belt, the water pump, and the tensioner on it for about $1,000, and you need to do that every 4 or 5 years or 100,000 miles to not cause your engine to have the whole top end of it blow up. So make sure that you're changing the timing belt on your vehicle. Brakes are going to last you 50 to 75,000 miles depending on the use of the brakes. Again, this comes back to, are you towing trailers? Are you hauling loads? Are you braking hard? Do you have one of those heavy lead foots? I was at home last summer with my brother. He pulled in a big Chevy Tahoe, and the woman who owned it was towing a horse trailer, and my brother took the brakes off the car and they were almost done after 8 months, and she didn't have the brakes set up on the trailer correctly, and so therefore was relying on the truck brakes and wore out the truck brakes. Okay, we talked about earlier about the with Tyler, the batteries, they'll last you 5 to 10 years. Generally, they're not going to go right away. They're not just going to leave you on the side of the road, but they will kind of dwindle in terms of their ability to start the engine, and then after a while, they're just going to wear out and they're going to stop. The belts, you can see here on the front of this picture of this engine here that there's a belt for the air conditioning unit, there's a belt for the alternator, and then there's another belt on here for the water pump. These are the main belts on the front that need to be checked and inspected every now and again. If you see any fraying or cracks or those types of things that need to be replaced. And then here, I don't know whether you can see this, but there's also the timing belt here as well. And that's what you'll need to be replacing in terms of the timing belt. Now, if you have a high performance car and it has a supercharger in it, you're going to need to change that supercharger belt approximately 60,000 miles. Suspension and tires. This is something that's going to vary depending on your driving style. If you're driving hard and you're cornering hard, you're going to wear your tires out, especially if you have low pros like on this Maserati here. So know that, okay? Suspension depends on the make and model of your vehicle, whether it's a high-end sports car, those types of things. You may have to change your suspension earlier and put different shocks and springs and those types of things in it. Electrical, spark plugs should be changed every 12 to 15,000 miles, and wires, rotors, and caps, these are probably 20 to 30,000 miles in terms of spark plug wires, your rotor, and your cap, but this is all part of getting your vehicle tuned up and keeping it running well. This electrical part is what sends the electrical signal and sets off your spark plugs in your vehicle. So you need to have a big spark to ignite the fuel inside the cylinder chamber so that you can have the best combustion and the best use of the fuel. If you don't have a big spark that ignites the fuel, then what's going to happen is the fuel isn't going to burn efficiently inside the engine compartment, and you're going to get poor fuel mileage as well. You're going to create more pollution that's going to be run through the catalytic converter and those types of things. And essentially what's going to happen is it's going to cost you a lot more money in fuel. Troubleshooting. So after a certain amount of time, once you start getting up that 75,000, 100,000 kilometers, you might want to think about putting some fuel injector cleaner in it. All modern vehicles have fuel injection. Thermostats, if the vehicle is heating up or you're not getting heat out of it in the winter time, the thermostats have a 4 to 5 year life. And there's a spring in it, and what happens is because the spring just gets weak after a period of time, and it either won't open or it won't close in the winter time. Air conditioning, your air conditioning may wear out, or it simply needs to be charged after a period of time. I know that you can go to Canadian Tire and you go to Costco and you can buy these recharging kits for your air conditioning, and you can do it yourself. My suggestion to you is to take it into a shop and get them to do it with the air conditioning, because they have a machine that they put onto your air conditioning system in your vehicle, and they can tell whether there are any leaks in your system. Because if your air conditioning fluid is down, you want to know whether there's leaks in it or those types of things so that they can have it fixed. And I know that it's inexpensive to get the air conditioning charged. I've taken it into shops before, and it's only about $100, $120. I showed you the picture of the cabin filter in the buggy. Last winter, I realized that the defrost wasn't working very well in the buggy. Well, once I changed the cabin filter, I figured out why the defrost wasn't working, because it's that filter that the air was being pulled through for the defrost, so it wasn't working. Now, electrical, all cars have fuses in them, much like the fuse panel in your house, that now they're all breakers, but in the old days, they used to have fuses you used to have to screw out and then put back in and replace the fuse. Cars are the same. You have fuses in your car. So if your horn's not working, first stop is to check the fuses, okay? And there is a little map that will tell you which fuse is for which electrical component in your vehicle, whether it's for the power mirrors or it's for the horn or for the headlights or those types of things. So first port of call, if you have something electrical that's not working in your vehicle, check the fuses. Most of the time, the fuse panel will be down somewhere underneath the steering wheel compartment. If it's not down there, then check under the hood. There's another one under the hood as well, and make sure that none of those are blowing. Now, if the fuses are blowing and you change it and it blows again, then you've got something wrong with your vehicle that's electrical, and you'll need to take it into an auto mechanic and get it looked at. Now, we have a specialty electrical mechanic here in Vernon, and if you have one of those and you have electrical problem with your vehicle, then I suggest you take it to them for that issue. Lights and tire inspection. Okay, so once a month, every couple of weeks, you should be checking the oil level on your vehicle. Some will have a dipstick. Newer models, high-end Audis, German cars, those types of things, you'll have to check it on the console inside the car. Others will have dipsticks. Check all of your lights, your high beams, your low beams, your clearance lights, your parking lights. Check your brake lights. Make sure that your four-way flashers work. So make sure all the lights are working, as Mallory said earlier. And then inspect your tires. All new tires will have wear bars on them. Make sure that the tread isn't down to the wear bars. Make sure that you don't have any uneven wear on the tires of your vehicle, and make sure that you don't have any cracks or unusual abrasions on your tires or those types of things. Keep in mind with tires, it's where the rubber hits the road. It's the only thing between you and the bitumen. So make sure that you have good quality tires on your vehicle. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Good luck on your driver's test. Car maintenance tonight, keeping your car running smoothly so it doesn't end up on the side of the road as we did a couple of weeks ago in the buggy. I was telling you about that in the introduction. Coming down the road, it just turned off like somebody turned the key off. And my son and I ended up sitting on the road for 20 minutes, and then it started up again and away we went. We ended up stalling again halfway up the highway, and trust me, the highway that we drive on between here and Kelowna, there's no place to pull off on the side of the road. So we got over as far as we could, activated the hazard lights to warn traffic, and then waited 15 minutes, and again it fired up again, and got it home and took it into the shop. And of course they couldn't find anything. They're looking at the blogs and those types of things, trying to figure out what it was. They thought it was the igniter. And the igniter is essentially where the electricity comes in, and then it sends it to the distributor, and the distributor parcels it out to the spark plugs. Changed that, changed a few other things, and took it in the morning at 8 o'clock, called them at noon, nothing, and figured it was they replaced a bunch of parts, and changing more parts on the buggy. And so finally in the afternoon, I needed it because I had to take my son to sports, and well, it'll run enough to get him down there, and if it stalls, then I'll just pull off the road and wait. And went down in the afternoon to pick it up, and they said, oh, we figured out what it was. They said it was an old remote engine starter on the vehicle, and I didn't even know there was a remote engine starter on the old buggy, because all I ever had was a key for it. And they said, oh yeah, that's what we figured what it was. And the shop that I take it to was really good. I mean, they changed a number of parts on it, and it wasn't anything, you know, they only charged me $100 in labor, and they had it there most of the day, which was very kind on their end. And so I figured out what one of them had, what one of their beverages of choice was, and took it down a bottle of rum to say thanks for all the work they did on the buggy. And, you know, the buggy lives yet again. And, you know, as I said, I didn't even know I had a remote engine starter on my vehicle, but I was talking to Doug, the mechanic, and he said, yeah, he was working up in the oil fields, and these guys with these brand new pickup trucks, you know, $80,000-$90,000 pickup trucks, and they would just shut down in the oil field, and they would get them towed into town 200 kilometers away, 160 miles away, and they would find out it was the remote engine starter. So he was just had some experience with that sort of thing, and that's ended up what it was. He unplugged it. It's run fine ever since. So kind of crazy. Epic, if you are looking for a repair shop, try to ensure that they are ASE qualified or good service quality. My family uses a good car repair shop for non-body jobs, for chassis repair, qualified shops. Okay, so that's, yes, and that's one of the things you want to make sure that they have the right certifications and licenses as a shop. You also want to ask friends and family who they recommend as a technician to do work on your car, because unfortunately there are some bad stories out there of mechanics that, you know, are not reputable at all and will take your money and, you know, embezzle money from you and those types of things, because that's essentially what they're doing. But there are good shops out there. I have a good shop. As I said to you, they had the car for 2/3 of a day last week. They only charged me $100 in labor. Another time I took the vehicle and it was making a sound in the front end, and there was a stone stuck in behind the disc brake shield. They said, no, you don't owe us any money. It's all good. So they figured it out what it was and were able to fix the vehicle. So that's what happens. Mallory, what is a timing belt in a car? Okay, so the timing belt, petrol engines are they're called 4-stroke engines. So there's basically an intake. The piston sucks in the fuel and air. There's a compression stroke. The piston comes back up. You create pressure in the system, and the fuel ignites and explodes. You have the power stroke, which pushes the piston back down, and then you have an exhaust stroke. So it's a 4-stroke engine. And there are 4 to 8 pistons in a car. So we'll stick with a 4-cylinder just to keep it simple. So there's 4 pistons in a car, and they fire 1, 3, 2, 4. So the first one fires, the third one fires, the spark plug fires, 2 fires, and then 4 fires. So they fire at different intervals so that you get a power stroke all the time from an engine. And this is what the timing belt does, runs the valves so that they open and close at the same time that you're putting fuel and air into the engine. Now that's probably a lot confusing, but that's essentially what the timing belt does, is runs the intake valve and the exhaust valve so that they're opening and closing at the right time. Petrol engines, 4-stroke petrol engines, there's a lot of stuff that has to be coordinated to the exact millisecond, and computers have actually allowed vehicles to be much more precise, produce more horsepower, and be more fuel efficient. And this is what the timing belt does, is from the crankshaft, the main crankshaft opens and closes the valves on the engine. Does that make a little bit of sense, or was that really complicated? Tim says the timing belt drives the camshaft from the drive shaft, which is exactly correct. Tim says our CRV says oil changes every year or when the dash tells you to, whichever is first. Tim, I don't think I would rely on that. What year is your CRV, Tim? Goose, I know next to nothing about cars. I just know how to drive them and teach others how to drive them. I kind of grew up in a garage, so that's why I know a little bit about cars. Sam, I'm glad you are answering these questions, Rick. That's a mouthful of an answer for the timing belt. Yeah, I think I could make that a little bit less complicated. So essentially, let's just stick with one piston. Let's try that one more time because I think that some people might be confused by that. Okay, so it's a 4-stroke engine. So what happens is intake, the piston goes to the bottom of the chamber. It sucks in the fuel in the air. The piston goes back up. It's called a compression stroke because it creates pressure inside the cylinder in the piston wall. Goes back down. The spark plug ignites the fuel and air mixture inside the piston. It forces the piston down, and then the piston comes back up and you get an exhaust stroke. So what happens is at the beginning, when you get the intake valve opens up to let air in and the fuel mixture. And then it goes up and it goes back down, it comes back up, and the exhaust valve opens up to release burnt gases out of the piston chamber. So essentially what the timing belt is doing on each one of the 4 cylinders is opening and closing the intake and exhaust valves on the engine for that timing of bringing air and fuel into the cylinder chamber, and then it's opening the exhaust valves to get rid of any gases that were a result of the combustion inside of the chamber. That's simpler and a little bit easier to understand is what the timing belt is doing. Tim, I usually have about 30% left on the oil life at the 1-year mark. You don't drive your CRV very much if you still have 30% left every year. That's great. Mallory, I've become a much smarter passenger thanks to your videos and all of the great information that you provide for us. And thank you for that compliment, Mallory. That is awesome. Most new engines are dual overhead cams just to make it even more complicated and, more stuff going on with the engines. Joe, my engine overheated in the dead of winter in rural Quebec after I spun out and hit a snowbank. It was freezing out, but the engine was overheating. All good when I cleared the snow off the radiator. Yes, and that's a good point that Joe just made. If you do get blockage in the radiator, then that could cause your vehicle to overflow or overheat, the engine to overheat. And if your engine is overheating, if that coolant gauge inside your vehicle goes into the red, okay, shut your engine off and figure out what's going on with your vehicle because you will do irreparable damage to the engine, okay? Do not drive your car if the engine is overheated. You will blow it up. It's a very bad because then you got to replace the engine. You can't fix that, okay? Once you overheat it, once you kill the engine because you've overheated it, you can't fix that. So you have to figure out what's going on. As Joe said, snow got stuck in the radiator and causes it to overheat. The other thing is most modern radiators will have 2 fans on them. One is for the air conditioning and the other one is for the cooling system of the engine. Make sure that those are turning and those are kicking in. The other way that you can check those as part of your pre-trip inspection is to turn your air conditioning on full, and the electric fans, both of those should come on when your air conditioning is on maximum in your vehicle. And again, that will help you out in terms of not overheating your vehicle. Now, the other thing you can do in the summertime, if your vehicle, here's a little trick for you. If your engine is overheating or you're having trouble keeping the engine temperature at the right out of the red on that gauge, you can turn the heat on inside the car and that will pull some of the heat out of the engine into the cabin. Now, it's not very fun in the middle of summer to have your heat on full, but it will bring the temperature of your engine temperature down and suck off some of the heat from the engine to keep it running at a temperature that maybe you could lip it into a shop or those types of things. Boss, you're most welcome. Thank you so much for the great live stream. I love hearing about the maintenance, and I don't personally think that timing belt explanation was too complicated. Thank you, boss. I appreciate that, because I was trying to make it as simple as possible because it can get very complicated. And, it was interesting. I was talking to my mechanic there a couple of weeks ago when the engine starter overrode the engine. 15,000 separate parts. Most cars are made up of approximately 15,000 parts. So some days I think to myself, it's kind of a miracle that these things even run, but there you go. Mallory, I understood what you were talking about when it come to the timing belt. Awesome. Mallory, okay, we read that one. Awesome. Boston water pump and thermostat would be changed as well. Yes, and Boston, the timing belt on the Honda CRVs, they usually do the water pump at the same time. One other point that I'm thinking about the water pump, the fuel pump. Here's a good maintenance tip. don't run your vehicle below a quarter of a tank of fuel consistently. If you do that, what happens is the fuel sloshes around in the tank. The fuel pump sits at the bottom of your fuel tank. It comes out of the fuel because the fuel in your tank actually cools and lubricates the fuel pump. So if you consistently run your tank less than a quarter of a tank, eventually what's going to happen is that the fuel pump is exposed, it runs hot, and eventually you're going to burn out the fuel pump in your vehicle. So if you can keep it above a quarter of a tank, that's going to prolong the life of your fuel pump in your vehicle. So then a little tip for you. Alexander, I'm a new car owner. Noticed water dripping under the car just below the front passenger seat. Is this normal? Alexander, yes. If you have an air conditioning and you are running the air conditioning in your vehicle, when you stop and park the vehicle, then yes, the air conditioning will drip. It's the condensation on your air conditioning pump that's dripping under the vehicle. So yes, that could be normal for you. So have a look at that and just see if it's that. Keep an eye on your radiator fluid level. If you notice that it's not going down, then it's definitely your air conditioning pump for sure.
With the Smarter Driver podcast, we provide the stepping stones towards your success in driving. We empower you to achieve your goals and aspirations as they relate to getting your first license, becoming a safer, smarter driver, or starting a career as a truck or bus driver. If you're just starting out and working towards getting your first license, be sure to check out the Smarter Driver course package down in the description. Guaranteed to pass first time. As well, if there's something about driving that just really irks you and you'd like to get it off your chest, please leave a comment. I'm your host, Dr. Rick August. Thanks very much for listening. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.